Dude, how's your morning been, man?
Good. Yeah, I did the woke up, practice. Here. It
I'm
was
not
good.
doing too good.
Oh, you're not doing good?
I woke up like late. I slept late. I didn't sleep till like 4.
Oh. Oh, you're not the way you
2:20.
said I'm not doing too good made it sound like what happened? Did someone die? But no, you
No,
just
no,
have a
no.
hangover, is what you're
Yeah,
saying. Okay, I gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely
I'm wearing the same shirt as last night. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Long Form Conversations, the podcast where we talk about long form improv. I'm your host, David Long, and today, I also want to say this episode might come out a little late and it might be a little bit poorly edited because we are recording this on Tuesday, October 17th. The episode is supposed to be coming out Wednesday, October 18th. So that's a tight turnaround time. Maybe it's a little late. Maybe the editing is not as good as it should be, but I wanted to make sure I record this on this day specifically because we have a very special guest who just had a very special evening. So this is a very talented improviser, actor, comedian, AMC Entourage member, computer programmer, top golf player. Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. Top golf player. Just a great friend, good Christmas dates, and a good poker player. You got a lot of things going on, but this is a newly minted member of the Lloyd Knights roster. Please welcome Sahil Desai.
Oh, thank you. It's
How's it
funny
going, man?
that kind of sorry, I'm just gonna open this. Is that kind of presentation it's funny when there's no one there to listen except
You're
for
right.
me. It's you not talking to me, but to nobody.
True, true. Yeah,
But I guess there will be a lot of people.
there's gonna be a lot of people listening. I always imagine on the other side
Yeah.
of that camera or
Tens
this
of people.
microphone,
Yeah.
there'll be dozens of
Dozens of
people.
people.
So I'm doing it for
I'm
them.
one of those people. I'm gonna probably watch
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. How's it
Good.
going, man?
Great. Yeah. Just had practice.
Yeah.
8 hours after the show's over.
So we are recording this the morning after the Lloyd night opening night
Yeah.
for Sorry, I'm in London.
That's right. Yeah.
How are you feeling, man?
Great.
It's an
It
incredible
was
night.
such a fun. It was such a fun show. Just and also I think, I don't know, it was just electric. Just UCB stage. Just I think there's so much. I performed on the stage, but there's something I don't know. It's just something special about the I don't know what the word to use is the
The je ne sais quoi.
yeah. That means I don't know what to say.
Oh, okay.
But it's the circumstance almost of it of like being able to you got onto this team and it's the history and all that other stuff. I don't know, it's just kind of really cool and it's fun to be able to share it with people.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And share with people who have had it like yourself who's experienced it too. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was so great to see this, move on.
Mhm.
We haven't had it for so long to continue to see, new cycles go through. It's like, okay, great, like momentum's catching on, and pressure's off now,
Right.
right? So, but y'all had an amazing show.
Thank you.
Y'all had one practice before that. That was
One, yeah, we had one practice 1 week ago, and
Uh-huh.
that's also when we first all met. Most of us, I think I knew Alex is the only person I knew before. We also had never done improv together. We did a lot of adjacent improv, meaning teams that perform on the same night. But yeah, we all met for the first time and then performed for the first time yesterday, and it was great.
I think that's one of the magical things about these house teams. The audition, it's tough, but the idea is that y'all can play with a lot of different types of people and they put you together on a specific team.
Exactly, yeah.
With the idea that y'all can play, and y'all knocked it out of the park. That was an incredible
Thank you.
first
Thanks
show.
for saying that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.
Oh, I do want to ask about how was your practice? Did James talk about me?
Did he talk about you? Yeah, it was mostly about you. It was
Yeah.
weird. He's like, when you frame things, make sure to frame things as David. And I was like, what the fuck? But no, it was good. It was good. It's all about framing.
Y'all, because he closed down the bar too. Y'all.
Oh, he did? Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I saw he had a Gatorade. Gatorite, I think it said. I was like, is that Gatorade? That's
like, no,
Gatorite.
this is a
Oh,
Rite Aid
they've made a new
brand,
Gatorade. Yeah.
generic.
Electrolyte based. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I was like, oh, probably.
It was a good practice. Y'all.
It was
y'all
good. Yeah.
riding the high of last night.
Yeah, it was just. I think it was nice. There's a great camaraderie in this team, which is nice. Like
Yeah.
the family feel,
Yeah.
which is nice. Which is
How were his notes?
hard to find. Yeah, I don't know how like nitty gritty improv stuff, but like I think so much of the more improv I do, the more like the recurring themes are just like, how can you get on the same page as your scene partner as quickly as possible? And what do we have at our disposal to do that? And so I think, and just practicing that, knowing that they don't know what that, not knowing, trying to identify that they're not on the same page and then making it so they're on the same page. I think that was so much is always the root of so many notes that I find these days.
Yeah.
So.
Connect, listen, communicate.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah, be heavy-handed until you're not, like be heavy-handed with saying the game or whatever it is, or frame. Yeah, but it was good. It was nice. Yeah.
What else is new?
What else is new?
How was don't tell me, Tennessee?
Nope.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville was okay. It was all right. Well, meaning like, no, the place is really cool. It's a nice city, but it was a bachelor party with 40 people, 40 actual people at a bachelor party.
Jeez.
It was like, it's the guy's like 20 of his cousins and 20 of his, I guess, acquaintances and friends and stuff.
Wow.
He's a high school friend I'd barely see, but it was.
And
it
you
was
made
exhausting.
The list still?
Yeah. I made the list.
That's incredible.
I did when I got there. I was like, I probably didn't need to be here. Like, I think he made me feel like, oh, come on, you got to come. But he wouldn't have known if I wasn't there.
I mean, maybe you mean that much. So
no, maybe
not, but
no, but it was nice. It was like fun to just talk to some people. Yeah. But generally, pretty boring guys.
Yeah. I don't want to flex, but I am gonna flex a little bit.
Okay.
My 21st birthday, I think it was like 35 people come out to dinner. Way too many people. Didn't have a chance to say.
Where did you eat? Where did you go?
We went to Korean barbecue and we all sat at different tables.
Yeah, but that's the thing. 35 for a dinner? That's not gonna ever work.
Stupid. Yeah, it was very.
You're also then. I know.
I mean, everybody just want to come out to drink, so it's fine. I'm 21.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I barely spoke to anybody, so. I think a bachelor party with 40 people is insane.
It's insane. Yeah, it was.
What do you do? Knock on every single hotel room.
So this was the insane part. It wasn't. We stayed at an Airbnb. Well, I think half the guys stayed at an Airbnb that was, I think, maybe like 15 people. It's like 3 stories. It was like one of these like houses.
Oh, like a party house.
It kind of, but it was like olden style, like old America, like with a twinge of like, oh, this is probably racist live.
You can say plantation style, yeah,
plantation style kind of thing.
Yeah, probably.
But it was bizarre. But I guess what was nice is I got there first and I got a room by myself. And so no one else bothered me.
Everyone else had double beds.
I think some people had rooms with 2 or 3 beds.
That's insane that this is a high school friend that I'm guessing you don't talk to very often. But
not like actively. No, we like catch up once a year.
You got there first.
Well, I think I just entered the room first because I was there more part of the first crew.
It's a power move. You're like, hey, I know you are all getting here at 1. Well, my flight arrives at 11:30 and I'm gonna set up first.
I did it, so I claimed it. And it has a attached bathroom. It's pretty nice. So.
You had your own master?
I think everybody did have these
I don't think
I don't think I really had anything more than everyone else. It was just a very big house.
You don't have any cause to complain.
No,
you had a great time then.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Was it hot?
It was actually cooler. It wasn't that hot.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was pretty nice. Played some golf. You
top
mentioned
golf?
Not top, real golf.
Bottom
you
golf?
didn't mention that. I'm a real golfer.
He is a real golfer.
Before I'm a top golfer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've only seen you in the capacity of top golf.
That's true, yeah. Which is honestly fine. You don't need to play real golf. No one needs to really play real golf. Yeah.
I'm usually so much better at this.
Yeah, what's going on, dude?
I don't know. Maybe it's because we just saw each other Sunday. Maybe it's because we see each other so often.
Yeah, we saw each other several days in a row, right? Like we saw that show on Sunday, and then I saw you yesterday briefly. So yeah. We've just talked about everything.
We've just talked about everything.
It feels weird to repeat stuff that you've had a conversation with somebody already.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I don't know if it's coming out. Sahil and I are friends. We're really good friends. We hang out a lot outside of improv.
Okay, really good friends?
Okay, we're like medium.
No, we're very good friends.
We're regular friends. How about that?
We're regular friends.
Consistent.
Sounds like we're not friends.
Just in terms of consistency, we're
no, we're great friends. Yeah, we have a lot of similar likes.
We should be able to do this.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right. What the fuck? We don't have chemistry as people.
Wait, if there's not a dinner in front of us, or if there's not,
or if we're not facing the same direction watching a movie, or if we haven't gone to a movie or right before a movie, right?
Yeah, I'm either watching you do Asian AF or you're gonna watch me.
I'm gonna watch you do Asian AF tonight. Yeah, that's right.
Great. Then what's something to talk about? Maybe we should have waited till tomorrow to have this podcast. All right. Well, good catching up with you.
This is great.
Let's go ahead and dive into our first segment, which is going to be
Improvster Syndrome.
This is our opportunity to dive into your background and your origin story as an improviser.
Okay. But
Try to get through
You
it.
just want me to talk about how improv is a part of my life?
How you started? You listened to some episodes, right?
Yeah, I've listened to all the episodes. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Well, you know how it goes down.
Yeah. So I'll tell you I took my very first improv class, which was it's a very weird way to take improv because I had a friend of mine named Zane. He was one of these guys who just like tried a lot of hobbies, like when we were in our 20s. He would just try a lot of different stuff. And I remember noticing that because I was like very shy throughout my life in my early 20s, everything. And when I noticed that he was starting to get more comfortable socially and like was a much more, I don't know, like wittier, which is a weird way to like describe a person getting, but he was getting wittier. And I noticed, oh, he's starting to take improv classes. So I was like, what's improv? Oh, it's that Whose Line Is It Anyway thing. So it was short form being taught by this one woman who named Zoe Galvez. Pardon me. Ooh, who was a part of Bats Company in San Francisco, which is a long form, the kind of a more
Bay Area.
Bay Area, I think, theater, Bay Area theater, something.
Bay Area Rail Transit.
No, it's BATS, right? Yeah, it's the BART. Yeah, she used to work at the BART. No, and she basically taught her own private classes where it was just word of mouth, friends of friends being like, oh yeah, take. So it'd be in this one like dance studio, and it was just like basic improv short form stuff. And I did Zoe's classes for like 5 years, but we'd have one show a year in December, one show a year. So I'd take like 1 or 2 classes a year, and then the last class would culminate in a show. And I just remember the first time.
Better have been a good show. Dude.
Well, sometimes it wasn't. And so then you'd be like, and then she started doing 2 back-to-back shows, so at least you'd have a chance. Mm-hmm. And also, you did short form, so it's like you have like your turn. It's like, oh, your turn to kind of like, here, you better make a count, and you know exactly when it is. Unlike long form where you make your own turn kind of thing.
It's like turn based.
Yeah, it's turn based improv, which is so funny to think about. But I started taking classes there, and it really just, I think what I loved is I never had any aspiration really to perform or like think that that's something I would be doing.
You're just trying to get witty like Zane.
I just wanted to feel more comfortable in my skin and just be able to be socially not the person quiet in a group setting, just kind of listening to everybody else, which is what I was. And I wanted to just be able to, the best way to describe it is like to hold court, if you will, like to have the ability to talk to a big group of people.
Judge?
I want to be able to. I wanted to go to law school, and I was like improv at the beginning, which probably does help with
you. So how long you said you take a class all year long, and then you do a show?
No, it was like there'd be like 2 8-week classes in a year. One of them I would take like a movement class, and then another one would be
I see. But those classes did not result in a show.
No shows, and then there would be a show class at the end of the year, and then around November, December, there'd be like you invite your friends.
So how many did you take before you got that show class?
I took the show class pretty soon after I started. It was like probably like 2 classes and then a show class, and then but yeah, I would do it, and I didn't even know about long form. And there's a theater in San Francisco called Endgames. I knew about Bats, but Bats I would say is akin to kind of Groundlings in similar ways. Like it's very actor oriented, and it also has a huge barrier for entry. So there are open auditions, but I think a lot of it is you have to be in their system, and then you have to like know people and be invited to audition. It was like a big, I guess, which is literally what UCB is like too. But it definitely felt, I remember being like, this is not really a comedy based thing either. Comedy isn't their main forte. They're not trying to teach comedy. And I was like, that's the thing that, it's more acty, more just like performing and stuff. And so I was like, I'm not really interested in doing that. So I never took classes there, but I was like, I like started to really love this like improv thing. And I was like, man, this is really great. I loved having an audience there.
Did you crush your first show?
Here's the thing. I remember when I because I never took any acting either, but I remember the moment where I was like, oh, maybe like I really like acting aspect of this, which is there was an exercise. There's a little game called Genre Switch. You ever played that? You get a bunch of genres from the audience, and then the director will just like, or coach, whatever, will like ding a bell and be like, film noir, and you have to like do the same scene, but it shifts completely. Mm-hmm. And so there's actually a clip of it on YouTube still that my friend uploaded, which anyone can watch if they can find the right query to find it. I can.
Would I look up Bats?
No, it's just my friend Bernardo just uploaded it to his channel. Okay. Yeah, I think he calls it the Sahil Show. I don't know if it shows
the Sahil Show.
Yeah, he would say it's the Sahil Show, and
that's how you got all those.
But it was one scene from.
That's how you got all those followers.
The
Sahil Show.
But to like do without like meandering too long in the short form phase of my life, then my friend Oleg, who I met through there, you know Oleg as well. Oleg took Zoe stuff. I took a break from it. He started taking Zoe classes, and then I came back, and I remember Zoe being like, "Oh, you and Oleg, you should like, you guys are so similar." And I remember meeting him, being like, "This guy's a fucking psychopath. I'm not like him at all."
You think she was just like,
No, I think it was we both shared the same like fearlessness about
Mhm.
we were always the first person to like volunteer to do. We wanted to be on stage and like try shit, and a lot of people were still scared. So he discovered Endgames, which is like a long form theater with like 101 through, very similar to UCB, very influenced by like the Annoyance and like IO kind of style, but the word game was used a little bit, and so Oleg takes a class there, and then he's like, dude, we got to go there. And I think right around this time, I saw my very first long form improv show, which was Convoy at SF Sketchfest. And I just remember being like, what the fuck? What the fuck is that? Like, I'm sure this is a story that everybody who see long form's first time is like, wait, what? I want to do that. That's like, they just took a word and made a whole thing out of it.
how long were you doing short form before you discovered long form?
I think it was probably like 3 years.
Wow.
It was like a
You did 3 years of
long
short form.
time. And it wasn't like,
And only 3
and
shows,
it also
huh?
wasn't, yeah. Maybe at the last couple of years, I think we're like 2 shows each.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like, still, that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
There's no indie scene. There's no community. It's just a bunch of people of very varying ages.
Someone has to organize it. Someone has to market. I think that's something about short form. Yeah.
And it was, yeah. And so, and then I started taking Endgames, and then I met like a lot of great people in my one-on-one, and you start to, I think long form is where you start meeting comedians. You start meeting the people who want to get really good at comedy, and you just share something very close. So I met a lot of great friends. You know so many of them, like Itai, Oleg, Rod, Nate, all these guys who are all drunk theater guys. They're all out here now, but a lot of, and actually just even on the sauce, Derek Polka was a part of Endgames. Like, yeah. Are you? Yeah, I wasn't sure if people could see you counting every time I say.
Sorry, yeah, it's visual. I am like holding up fingers. Yeah.
And
there's a lot of people that migrated from SF down here.
Yeah, a lot of people, and Endgames was such a. I think also I was there at such a wonderful time because it was so booming. The jams were full every week. I was at every single jam. It was like a beautiful place to get reps. The indie scene was great. It wasn't too saturated, so you could always get like. I remember being able to do duo sets at like indie night, where there was like an indie night followed by Thunderdome, which is like our cage match, and you could. There also was not as, it wasn't as like dense of a population as UCB, so you could imagine UCB, but you could be at cage match like within 3 weeks of signing up. Like,
yeah,
like
how did you take to long form first? Because after doing 3 years of short form, I think you get habits, you get patterns, you get into things. So how was, do you remember how like your first couple of classes jumping into long form was?
Good question. Let me think.
Consider the audience of people that have been doing short form. They said, I don't know, my teacher says long form is hard.
I think a part of sorry, let me just mute this. A part of, I think, the thing about Endgames, which was interesting at the time, is that at least 101, it was all focused on let me try to think back. I'm trying to put myself back in 101. It felt very familiar. I was like, oh, I've done this.
Yes, and perhaps.
Yeah, it was like the yes and stuff. It was
who, what, where?
Yeah, but also when I think back, I was like, yeah, I don't think it was all the basic stuff, like who, where, yes and just like listening and things like that. But Endgames was very organic oriented. The Herald, you'd learn the Herald in 501. So you do 4 different classes. They actually kind of banned the word game. You were the head of the theater was like, don't use the word game. He wanted to like avoid it. They would like use other terminology, but they're really just dancing around the fact that this is a game. And there were a bunch of UCB folks who had taken UCB or who had learned UCB style, who kind of snuck in and taught it like secretly without, even though it wasn't on the curriculum.
Snuck in on staff, you mean?
Like in classes, like they'd be like, all right, I remember the term rep. Like when that first guy was in 301, it's like my teacher, who's a good friend of mine now, Sam Turnbull, he was like, this whole point of this class is just reps. Let's just do lots of reps. But to answer your original question of like, what was it like for me going from short form to long form? I think the big thing was the floatiness of having to do improv for like 15 minutes off of one word was very jarring. And also I remember, like, I'm sure you experienced it too, is like a lot of really boring nothing sets, which is like you couldn't. they weren't
Talking
teaching
in
me.
circles.
Yeah, talking in circles, talking very narratively. Like I think plot becomes a big thing that we as human beings just, if we're not taught how to heighten, find unusual things, and hide, and do stuff like that, then we just end up just what's next in this story, and it's not captivating at all. But that was, I think, the hardest part.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned that it was like a booming scene. Were
Yeah.
you how soon were you making practice groups, teams,
for my one-on-one
submitting?
class, we made a
Oh
team.
wow.
Yeah, and a bunch of like
That is healthy.
yeah, it was like a bunch of just everyone on that team was so good. Like
Mhm.
a lot of people I continued to do other teams with, but it was called Snacks, and we were that fucking team that took photographs, like professional photos. You could probably still find them online, but of like us as a team, and like snack base. We had like snacks and whatever, and it was like very high quality. I remember hearing later, everyone else in the scene is like, "What do these fucking clowns think they haven't even done much improv, and they think they're like taking photos and stuff."
Hey, it doesn't
And I was
matter.
like, honestly, more people should do that. It's
That's
good. It makes you
commitment,
feel special.
baby.
It's
Look
nice.
at that. Yeah. You invest $500 in team photos
Yeah,
and headshots, you're gonna continue to
Right,
work
yeah.
together.
But yeah, and what you were saying, like, what was, so we had that team, and then very quickly more teams started popping
Yeah.
up. Drunk theater was kind of a drunk theater came out of, well, first it was just we wanted to do improvised plays, because no one does that. Like no one teaches really plays necessarily, the movie maybe, but like
the plot stuff, baby, that
Yeah,
acting stuff that was stuck in you, huh?
yeah. And I think that myself, this guy Brett, and Crow, and Oleg, the four of us, we kind of started, and then Itai came back into the scene, and he joined later. But before that, before Drunk Theater, we just wanted to do one act plays, and it came out of a snacks practice where there was very few people, and our coach was like, let's just try to do like a play, like a narrative thing. Let's try it out as an exercise so you can like be committed. And I think all was like, hey, that was pretty fun. What if we made a show? And so we kind of figured out narrative improv on our own, best as we could. Yeah.
All right. So you're going through the program. It sounds like I mean, it's going well. It's going what I guess in terms of that scene, and what happens once you're done, because I think classes sounds it sounds like it's really healthy, really great, but like there's always that like what now.
So the what now is, there's two things that in it at the time at Endgames. It's kind of like, it's different now, but at the time there was the flagship Friday show called Your Fucked Up Relationship, which actually you probably have heard of, because it was, I think, what's his name, Peter Kim, who started it with Max McCall, and then like a couple people in San Francisco. That's how he was one of the founders of Endgames. And Your Fucking Relationship was, they'd have a 10 p.m. show every 10 or 10:30 every Friday, and it was free. It was donation based. So after the show, they just would take any money, but it was a free show. The 9 p.m. was like a paid show, but it was also Your Fucking Relationship. And so being on those teams was like the pinnacle of like, it's like being on ASCAT, is the same, probably the same gravitas of like, relatively speaking, obviously not the same, but that was like the goal. Oh, you want to be on that show. But then also there was Herald teams.
When was that on?
Herald was on Wednesday nights, I believe. Yeah,
Wednesday. So this theater was so healthy that it had
like, all week,
all week long.
And they were at this theater called Stageworks, which has now since been rebought. Like Endgame's left, and then it's been rebought. It's going to be something new. Drunk Theater is actually going to be based out of there. Which we kind of took it. Yeah, but yeah, it was truly a burgeoning scene. It's like there were shows every night of the week, not Sundays, but Monday, Tuesday.
It was Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, because of religious reasons now. Yeah, the weekends were weirdly devoid of shows. There was like one show on a Saturday.
Well, it's San Francisco. People are probably doing
it. Was actually, I think, truly the Endgames was able to do that because no one else was doing shows during the week. So they like took all the weekday.
Yeah, there's like theater.
Slots. Yeah.
I know you not losers. You guys are always eating at Dolores Park, having picnics.
eating that Dolores Park.
You losers are always going to Boudin. You're always going to Ghirardelli eating chocolate. One more specific. You're always having rice-a-roni.
We're always at Alcatraz.
We're always at, you're always taking tours to Alcatraz. Always taking photos of the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm done.
Okay, good. I was just gonna wait till you're done. But yeah, it was an amazing community. It was like great.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, like those indie night on Tuesday nights, and then also Thunderdome, and like Thunderdome cage match was super. So there were so many opportunities as just, even like if you just wanted, you had like a friend, a duo, and you wanted to just do an indie show. Remember once Oleg and I did a set and the other team canceled, so we got an hour to just do a duo mono scene. Where can you do that here? Like, how can you can't do that?
And how was the turnout?
It was good. I mean, the thing is, turnout for those shows were like it depended at the time if there was a lot of people in the scene who were going to see a lot of shows. So I was a big person. I was there almost every day of the week watching other people's shows. And I think it's that like, give and take, like reciprocity kind of thing. And so like sometimes you have like 15 people, like, which is not bad when there's not other teams watching. They're people. It's your friends and you come and support. So, and Thunderdome would like sell out sometimes, and like like the jam was like 12 to midnight, no, 10 to midnight every Wednesday. And
2 hours of jamming.
yeah, and
you were there all 2 hours.
Yeah, it was truly my favorite thing because
And you had work in the morning.
yeah. Oh, this was like, yeah, my performance at work went down during those 2 years when I started doing long form. But yeah, so anyway, so there's Herald teams, and the way that works is once
tell
you're
me
done
about
with
the Herald.
501, 501 was the Herald. So you learned their version of what the
Mhm.
Herald is, which is closer to Chicago style, probably.
So you have to complete all. I'm guessing it's like
to
everywhere.
audition, you have to finish a 501. And then you audition, and the auditions were
How'd you do in that Herald class?
You would have 16 people and not 2 shows. You'd have 15 or 16, whoever showed up for the show would be all on the fucking stage.
Wait, that's Herald team?
For a Herald show, for your grad show.
Oh, for your grad show?
Imagine doing a Herald with like
12 people.
And then and they're like, okay, that's insane. That's maybe they're trying to be efficient, whatever. Fine. But then the teams are cast and there's 11 people on a Herald team. And then
I guess they're doing it kind of knowing that people can't make it to the show.
I don't think that's what it was. I mean, if that's what it was, that's like devaluing. It gives you the permission to not show up, which is I think a stupid way to think about it. But the worst part is it's already with 8 people, like the show last night, right? wasn't any of the first beats. And then
but you supported.
I did the third. I did the last group game, and everyone has their role, kind of, right? Like there's an agreement, and it's like, great. I'm gonna do the last game. But when you're just, when there's 11 of you and you don't do any of them, then what do you just kind of? Some shows you just don't do anything, and you feel like shit afterwards. Oh, I do remember another thing they did, which is, unlike UCB, it's not the same people in the second beat, which is, now I think about it, very confusing. And it's why the show felt the vibe was all very erratic. And we also weren't learning game per se. So it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just very like,
just like revisits.
Yeah,
that world.
We did do analogous, but if you never learn game, doing an analogous scene is like, what do you even, you're just
what
kind
are you
of
bringing. Yeah.
It
requires
like
that genre
people
swap.
And then I think it was like, you do like, I keep calling it flash forward, but it's like a time dash, flash forward. And
better name.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. A time dash or like shiny object and just follow a funny thing. And yeah, anyways, but that's, and then I ended up getting on a Herald team right after.
First audition?
First audition. So I got on a Herald team, and that was a lot of my friends were on it too, which was really nice.
Yeah,
and
all 11 of you.
Yeah, and it was like interesting. And I think UCB trains this thing out of you because it's so part of their curriculum. It is the entire purpose of UCB is the Herald when you're going through the classes. But at end games, it's the thing you get told at the end of your, like, you've taken 4 classes now in 5-1. By the way, the Herald.
Yeah.
Maybe you've been watching Herald Night, probably not, but now you have to learn it. And everybody.
So 4 of the classes are organic montage, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they never taught premise.
Yeah.
Which is wild because like the flagship show is a interview somebody and pull premise, and they never taught you how to do it.
Well, they want to keep the.
Yeah, it's like how do you learn? And it's bizarre, but and then just to fast forward and finish the story of my improv life, then I think they were recasting like the 9 p.m. because there was already a cast, and they redid auditions, and they redid the team. I was actually out of town, so I never auditioned for Your Fucked Relationship, and then they were like. And then it was kind of weird because they just then the way teams grew was that when people left, they'd ask people in the scene to come do a show, and that was like your audition. It's like, do a show with us, or practice with us.
Yeah.
And then if you do okay, then you get asked. So I got onto Your Fucked Relationship, and I did that for probably like 8 or 9 months before the pandemic. So I got like a lot of good like reps under my belt.
I want to hear about Drunk Beer. Tell me how that got started. Tell me.
Yeah.
So because. That's not any of these things, right? That's not a Herald team. That's not
no. It was purely a kind of offshoot of just a few of us were on snacks, and then we started. Then it was like myself, this guy Brett, Crow, and Oleg. The 4 of us started it, and initially it was just called One Night Only, and we had like they gave us like prime. It's funny because that's what Lloyd is, but 10 p.m. on a Monday.
Mhm.
And
that's prime in San Francisco.
well, no, it was not prime. It's not prime here either.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's
It's
the worst slot.
not
But
the worst.
no, it's not
but-
the worst. There's worse slots. But it's so we got given, I think, a run of like 3 months maybe, or like maybe it was like 6 months. We got like one show a month or something like that. So it's like on, Monday night at 10, and we're like, great, we're gonna basically get a title from the audience. It was very bare bones. It was like one night only is the name of the show, and we were called merely players, and that was the name of the troupe or team, whatever. And then we'd get a title from the audience, and then we would do a 30 or yeah, 2 30-minute improvised plays essentially. And we really didn't know what narrative like improv was. We just knew that we're going to try to do a beginning, middle, end. We spent a lot of time I remember early on just studying Dan Harmon's story circle and trying to internalize it, because we're like, oh, let's just try to be like, let's follow that idea of like, change, find the goddess, whatever, if I can come back, change, whatever, abbreviated version of the story circle. But essentially like trying to just do exercise where we practice telling a story as a group, so we're all on the same page. And it's evolved a lot since then, but in terms of just the story of the team. So we did that, and then Endgames didn't renew us, and we're like, well, god damn it, really? We're even getting a good turnout, and we were kind of upset about that. So Brett ended up reaching out to this other theater called Piano Fight that just was you could just rent space and do a show. So we ended up renting a space, and we did. I think that's Itai joined, and then we had like a show. I forget if Itai joined before Sardine Dillinger. We changed our name to Sardine Dillinger for like one show, and we're like, this is the stupidest name in the world. And then we were like, we got given a Friday slot, and we're like, fuck, we need to sell this show out. We got given a Friday slot, and that means that's like so hard to get. And so we're like, okay, we need to come up with a better gimmick to get butts in seats. So we had a long doc, and at the end of the doc, there was just like, I think just the words drunk theater, inspired kind of by improvised Shakespeare, drunk Shakespeare, and like I think those two things we were like, well, what about just drunk improv? And theater is the narrative aspect. So no one's doing narrative. Let's add alcohol, and we kind of just like reverse engineered the show from the name.
I was waiting for like this great origin story of like, how did alcohol come into place? You're like, nope. I mean, it's a good.
We're like,
brand.
well, people like that, right? It's a debaucherous kind of
that's so
stupid
funny
thing that I regret now, because it's like, fucking have to keep doing this shit.
Yeah.
I'm old now.
For these guys that have never don't know, have not seen it, Sahil is part of a theater company, a theater, whatever, I don't know what you call it.
An improv company, I guess.
An improv company, improv troupe, called Drunk Theater, and they do this every Friday at Santa Monica Playhouse, and
at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. One of the gimmicks though that they have to do, not the gimmicks,
the only gimmick.
I guess it is a gimmick. Can I call it a gimmick?
Sure, it's a gimmick.
It's a gimmick. They have to spin a wheel, and one of the performers on the wheel has to take 5 shots before doing an improvised play.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's great. It's amazing. I'm astounded, but I'm also always just so shocked because, I don't know. We all have different tolerances, but like 5 shots would kill me. I
think we also thought, I was the very first person to ever do it. And the day before the show, we were all just like, I think, biting our nails and like, is 5 too many? Because we were like, is it too few or is it too many? And I was like, it feels like still too many. It was initially going to be 10. And we're like, 5.
Jeez.
5. We're like 5. Yeah. And then I remember before we're like, what the fuck? Is that too many? We're like, well, we already told, it's already in the marketing. So we got to do it. So we did it. I took the shots, and I think the thing you underestimate is like the adrenaline of it all, and also having supportive teammates, is that I don't think necessarily, it depends on who you are, but at least for me, alcohol doesn't change how I improvise. It doesn't make me into a different improviser. It just clears it. Like, it's going to make it sound like I'm pitching drink and do improv, but it just makes you less indecisive. You're just so decisive because you think you're right about everything.
What about your motor functions?
I think, I guess I'm lucky because I never slur when I'm drunk, and you've been around me very drunk, and I generally seem the same. I don't seem drunk ever. So that is a weird problem in the shows. Like, it's like, are you really drunk? And I'm like, yes, trust me.
I think y'all have gotten too good at it.
That is true. Yeah. But we're not going to increase the amount of alcohol now.
Yeah.
But you do see someone you'll gloss past a name, or like you'll gloss past something, and you'll think you'll like draw your own conclusions about the set, and later on everyone else is looking at you like you're crazy, and you're like, what? I'm fine. You're the crazy ones. And you're like, oh, I completely missed this whole thing.
It's like running with ankle
Yeah.
weights. I
This
think
animal was a horse the whole time. I thought it was an elephant. I think that happened in a show recently, and everyone's like, even the audience is like, that's clearly a horse. I'm
it's like y'all are running with ankle weights. Like y'all get so used to it, and then for us, we're like, I don't think those are that heavy until we put them on. We're like, no, these are heavy, you know.
But yeah, so that's that show, and I think what's funny is the hardest part isn't the drinking, it's the narrative. It's like doing a narrative, both the comedy, like game-based narrative set, like balancing game and like a story which makes sense and ends cohesively, which doesn't always happen.
And we'll talk more about that when we get to the topic. So that's when did that get started?
We start our very first drunk theater show was, I think, September 16th or 17th, 2017.
Wow, you got the whole date.
Yeah, I remember the date. Yeah.
So that means y'all were doing things pretty successfully for 2.5 years before the pandemic.
Yeah, we were selling out every show. Like the Facebook ads were like gangbusters.
Yeah.
It was wild. And then they stopped after.
You guys, SEM. SEM. But after that, y'all had the pandemic. Yeah. And I want to now hear about this journey. I don't know if you're already doing it beforehand, but like I want to talk about the journey to LA now. Because I think again, there's so many people that do improv in so many different areas, and then there's always this hankering.
I gotta go down Los Angeles. Yep. I definitely think in San Francisco there was a lot of people once they discovered, hey, maybe I'm not bad at this comedy thing, and like, hey, we're getting pretty funny. Like, maybe I want to pursue this, and then it's either New York or LA. And I think we're actually surprisingly a lot of people went to New York. I knew a lot of New York people, and then a few LA people, but
more tech there.
What in New York?
New York, yeah.
I think it was less about that. They were not actually tech people. Like one of my friends was a nurse. She wanted to become I think it's like is acting and like stand up kind of what you're looking after, because that's going to be happening in New York, not in LA. And because I mean it also depends. Like, oh, I want to live in New York. It's like it's a different kind of vibe, right, than LA. So yeah, I guess it's just based on my experience with people, but my journey down to LA was purely like, it was always in the back of my mind, like maybe one day, but I kind of was happy with my life in San Francisco. And then the pandemic, and then I was dating somebody at the time, and we decided to just go down to Santa Monica and live there by like the ocean. Like, hey, let's just move out of our places because we're having roommate issues, and let's just do some Airbnbs until this thing blows over. And then we just stayed.
So you thought that you were just gonna stay here temporarily and
then go back to SF. Yeah, stuff was in storage, but the point, I think there was like some we're living in Venice at the time, and there was like some legislation or some laws changed in the city where Santa Monica and Venice, where you weren't allowed to rent for less than a year. Like they didn't let you do that. You had to sign a year lease, and so we were like, well, everything still seems kind of closed and doesn't look like we're going back. So let's just, even before my job let me, I like preemptively signed a lease and then stayed in Venice for like a couple of years, and
baller.
And then slowly just was like, hey, and then things started coming out. And I think truly the thing that this is truly a godsend is I did a lot of WJS online, like all of it.
But you moved before WJS.
No, I took online WJS.
Oh, sorry. So you moved down what year?
I moved in June or July 2020. So I was taking Regis for like 3 months because I think Will started teaching
3 months. Like, no, I've been doing a lot of it. 3 months is
Oh, dude, but I don't know if you know, I was like doing every class he was teaching.
Sure, no, I get that.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
It's just like three.
Let's see. March, April, May, June. Yeah, so like 3-4 months or so. Yeah, and then I was continuing to do it while I was down here online, and then.
But that was definitely I'm guessing a big encouragement, right?
Weirdly, the improv thing was, I didn't know what was gonna. It definitely was like, oh, maybe.
How'd you take to, because Will Hines teaches UCB style? How'd you take to that?
Loved it. I think that's what we in San Francisco. I even talked to people. I talked to some friends who live there now.
Yeah,
it is such a
influence.
Yes. What's the way
inspiration?
To describe it? It's such an inspirational thing and motivational thing to like have people who are really high caliber coaches who can really teach you game and like certain things really well. But because out there's like a limited, it's like a lot of the times people who are teaching you are kind of at the same level as you, and so having breakthroughs is not as big, and also being able to watch really killer sets, there's like a ceiling to it, and I think out here there's also just like, I don't know, there's something in the air, like the energy of like going to go see a UCB show, just like even just last night, it's like fucking wild, right? And where was I going with this? My original thought is like, yeah. And so I
Yeah,
think
I was asking like,
starting to take Will Hines. As soon
Yeah.
as I was like, oh, I can pay $20 for like a Will Hines 2-hour workshop online. Yeah, I'll take all of these as much as I can. And also, Will, the way he teaches is like so in line with how I think, very voice of reason, kind of analytical, and that, yeah. And I think online improv also just makes you really, makes you really good at like acting with your face, because that's all it is. So I think that really was great training. Did that for like 2 years, and then Will started doing in-person stuff, and that was purely coincidental. I didn't expect that to ever happen.
Yeah.
And what was great is UCB, not great, but UCB was gone at that point, right? It was like the like dormant period before it got rebought and came back. And in that period, I was like, oh great, there's We Just is the new thing. And that is such a beautiful, wonderful community. Yeah. And that's where I met you. One of the first in-person classes ever. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe, yeah, maybe the second.
It was on my birthday.
Yeah. It was
December 18th. Yeah.
the second We Just in-person workshop.
Yeah,
it was still at a time where everything was closed. So, and people in LA were just like what's like you sniffed out like they're doing in person.
Yeah, right.
I'm so sick of doing Zoom. And I luckily had taken a class with Will before, so I was like, hey, can you get me in this? I want to take this.
That's awesome. Nice.
So then we I got paired up on a scene together. We were on.
It was great. I still remember the scene.
Yeah, it was a very interesting like improv meet cute where it was just like we're doing our scene and all of a sudden it was like the best way I could compare it, because I think we're both very analytical, very like robotic players. It was like Bluetooth pairing. And I was just like,
but also like, oh, this guy knows the math of a scene.
Yes, exactly. Oh, I know and we were setting each other up. I was just
really
like,
funny. Yeah.
Great. It's great that he knows he's the voice of the reason. I'm the unusual.
Oh yeah.
And then we're both like, I offer this, and then he has the right reaction. He offers this. I have the right way to, accept that gift. And
I think to go back to, you were asking like what I got from Will is that truly something which I think was missing a lot was, what is your role in a scene kind of thing. And I think no one had ever clearly described that, both like if you're talking as simple as like initiation etiquette, which was also a huge breakthrough with premise for me, just being told, just light yes before you shoehorn your own thing into, before you assume they don't have anything, right?
Yeah.
And then also just, unusual, it's like now it's obvious because UCB teaches that, but for me it's like being the voice of reason and being the unusual person and knowing how to navigate that and and really learning how to be a good voice of reason is like, super great.
Yeah. And I can only imagine, not from not having that to now. I mean, look, let's just be honest. It's even hard now, right?
Yeah.
It's always hard to find like a dumb saying like game recognized game.
Yeah.
It's very hard to, when you like, or it's very rare rather, when you're like, oh, I'm trying to play game. I recognize that this person's trying to play game so we can play together, game recognized game. I remember at that moment, I was like, I didn't know that many people in the workshops. I was like, hey, who's that? What's his name?
Yeah.
And then since then, you've done you've done a lot of classes consistently that you've been part of the Comedian Zoom. You did a couple of teams there. I want to wrap things up with the audition. I guess taking UCB classes too. I think that's I guess.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Oh, UCB classes, right? Yeah. I made a conscious effort. I think now that I look back at it, I purposefully didn't take online UCB because I was like, oh, I'm just going to take all these We Just ones. And I think there was something about, it was like, I probably could have diversified my teaching a little bit more than just taking Will classes for 2 years. But I don't regret it. It was great. I think it was awesome to take him.
Not a bad person to learn from.
Not great at all. Not bad at all. He's great. You're great, Will, if you're ever watching this. But no, I was like, oh, I'm going to take it. And then I was like, waiting, I'll take UCB in person. And then the news of UCB going away, I was like, well, fuck, I'll never take UCB. And then finally, when it came back, I was in the first wave of in-person classes.
Yeah, it took summer 2022, right?
That's right. Yeah, I think it was like June, July. And then I just tried to take him as quickly as I could.
Yeah.
I guess like I would like take it, and then based on scheduling, because it's always like, oh, I can only do weekend ones at the time.
Yeah.
And so I would like intermingle those with a lot of We Just classes I've been taking.
And how was that? Because I always think it's interesting. You had been doing at this point now conservatively maybe like 8 years of improv, right? So jumping in, you have 8 years of,
Yeah, it was interesting. I will say, taking a one-on-one class, I personally try to pride myself as not somebody being like, I'm better than. I definitely know when I went from short form to long form, I had that like hubris about myself where I was like, I already know this, but I didn't know long form. What the fuck?
I was like, a new choice.
I was like, I know how to like pillars.
Yeah.
I can do the arms thing.
Mhm.
But I kind of like realized, you know what? No one is you don't get to a point in improv where you're just better than, like, it's such a weird way to think about it, right? Like, oh, I can't play with those people because I'm better. No, you should be able to play with whoever, and then the best people can play with people who don't even know improv and make them look good, right? It's almost like you can guide people into doing good improv. And so I was going in purely being like, all right, what is this like? How right are we gonna hit the ground running? And I had Todd Faison, and yeah, and it was like quite a jarring thing because he's very what's the right way to, not rigid, but like no bullshit kind of notes, right? And it was, that part was jarring in a one-on-one. I was like, oh man, do I not know improv? Because he's like really nitpicking. He's able to like tear apart all the scenes, and I was like, man, but it was good. It was good shit. It was like, oh right, yeah, there's so much more to learn. So I think that was like a good awakening of like,
You said that's
yeah,
Todd Faison,
Todd Faison, yeah,
and you're a big convoy head, right? That's what you started.
yeah, it was
So that
pretty
must
fun.
have been pretty great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Also, I think I took an Alex Fernie workshop in, I was in DCM one year and I could do the workshops. So I think 2018 I did a Alex Fernie workshop for the first time. But yeah, and then I took Berg stuff online. So yeah, all three, they're all great. I've taken the full
Great. All right.
triumvirate of the convoy. And yeah, they're all great. It's very interesting. They're all so different with how they approach improv. And but it was really interesting to see all their styles. Yeah.
And how much did your training with end games and like game, how did that translate? I know you also did a bunch of Ouija, so maybe
Yeah, I think truly I didn't understand game truly until I had like a crude understanding
UCB?
of game through some UCB UCB folks at end games, but not until Will's classes that I truly like get it. It clicked where I could be like, oh, this is how my brain was able to like do the auto completing a little bit easier.
What a luxury then to have done
Oh, God, yeah.
2 years of
It was like
Regis
truly a
before
boot camp of
UCB.
2 years to like get me ready to this to be here, you know.
And I would say by the time you get to UCB, then it's just like applying.
Yeah, and I think I will say this funny thing about UCB, and it was like there's this aura of prestige that when you don't live here, you're not by a UCB theater, where I'm online watching every single NY comedy like YouTube thing. I've seen all of the Cage Match show, everything a million times, and I'm like, man, these guys are so fucking good. Even like the not great sets are still like the confidence that people have on stage is like you don't see that very often in other theaters. The nervousness permeates throughout, and so here it's like, oh, these people are comfortable out there for the most part.
And then yeah, let's wrap it up. Talk about the audition. You already gave me a big deep dive.
Yeah, right after the audition, you came by and I literally walked you through it step by step. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your feelings. Let's just talk about how you felt, your feelings.
So I'll tell you this, and I think I've told you this before, is like we chatted right before the audition. You gave some really good advice, which was that like just the audition is not regular improv. I think that's like the best thing to really clarify is like you need to go in with a game plan and you need to kind of like execute it without not at the expense of other people, but just like, you know, despite the other people being there, kind of is the best way I would think I'd say it, which is that, and I definitely had that. I was like, cool, I'm a voice of reason. I'm going to lean on that. And you also was like, try to lean on what you know, because then you're going to just be able to, it'll be more authentic. And I was like, yeah, I'm a good voice of reason. I'm going to try to just do voice of reason. In the practice group I did a lot of premise initiation. So I was like, maybe I'm going to do it. But as soon as when I was up there, I was like, somebody else was walking. I was like, I'm going to just receive. And then I did that. And then I initiated like the second beat. So I was like, all right, cool. I basically thought about it from a checklist. I was like, I'm going to receive, try to be a good emotional voice of reason. Going to initiate the second beat if I have. I'm going to try to have an idea.
Yeah.
And if the other guy doesn't, then I'm going to do it, right? Guy, girl. And so I did. And then I also initiated one of the group games, or the group game. And then I did a side support move. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do an on-game side support move if I have one. I was like, here's the things I'm going to try to do if I can do them. And then I did them. And so it worked out.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's I don't want everybody to be in their heads, but like, yeah, you should have just a really basic simple checklist. So if it's voice of reason, that's your checklist. If it's a support move, it's a checklist. If it's initiating, it's check.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, and then once you have that, I think hopefully, again, I don't know how people are in their heads.
Yeah. It's really,
I love doing my head. But
me too.
like,
yeah.
If I can get that checklist, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like that sense
it's your framework for how do I approach this thing. And then, just see where you're at as base. I mean, people are going to throw shit at you. That's going to make it, you have to adapt. But,
how'd you feel walking out?
I felt good. I did. I was like, I got some laughs, and I felt like I'm aware enough to know when I make a move and I'm off game, and I'm like, that was not right. I mean, the more I talked to you about it, the more I started talking myself out of it being good. But like, I was like,
Sorry.
no, mostly because I was like, because I mean, you're a good like deconstructive improv. So like, I was like, yeah, obviously there's a way to make a lot of those scenes better. And I think you and I talked about, I think specifically there was like, oh, I could have, they never justified the why of why they would act in that way, but I could have done that. And maybe, is that on me for not, putting it on, you know what I mean?
I don't want people to get in their heads that deep.
I know, but
I know you and I.
But you don't
can't
have
talk
to,
about
because I got on and I didn't do that. So don't worry about it.
Sure.
But no, that's what I mean. Is like, you can once you start deconstructing, and truly, I've never deconstructed improv as much as I have the week after that.
Yeah.
It's insane. It is a weird mental thing, but I think it's like, yeah, I felt good. It was interesting. I didn't expect to feel that great about it, but I was like pleasantly surprised. I was like, hey, you know what? I did everything I could do, and if I didn't get it, then hey, that's not on me, because I did everything I could do.
Yeah, and that was Sunday, right? That was on a Sunday.
That was on a Sunday. Yeah,
and you got the call on Wednesday. Tuesday, Wednesday.
Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday night. Yeah.
How'd you feel about that? How was that?
It's great.
Yeah,
super fun. Yeah.
I didn't hear the story yet. How did it?
I was driving to Improvise Shakespeare.
Yeah,
to watch Improvise Shakespeare at the Largo, and I got the call. It was great. It was like it's such a lovely thing,
Yeah,
it's like a validating and joyous moment. Yeah.
And then you got to do your opening night, and you fucking crushed.
Thank you.
So
it was super fun.
Incredible.
Very excited to be able to do this for 6 months.
All right. Anything else you want to add about your improv journey?
Yeah, the only other thing I think is that, which is an interesting thing, is in the San Francisco community, in like the Endgames community, there were very few voices of reason. I think a part of it wasn't like taught as a role, but I got a note. Yeah, I got a note in 301 by one of my, because I used to play characters through even like in short form, I play a lot of characters, like voices, like weird embodied thing, and I remember that my acting was like, I was kind of like doing that at the expense of everything else in the scene, and it wasn't just like, scenes always felt floaty, and I think early on scenes always just, no one's like grounding and making things make sense. And I had the ability to do it. And so a coach told me, he's like, before you can play characters, try to play yourself in a scene. And I think enough people get given that note. I think like doing, UCB does a great job at like doing park bench of truth and like calibrating you to be able to just be yourself and talk and realize, hey, you can identify funny things and say funny things when you're yourself. Because that's what we're fucking doing out the street when we're hanging out afterwards, right? So
that's
like,
true.
Why are we not doing it on stage? Like, why is everybody converting themselves to characters?
That's weird.
Like, what if we all hung out after the thing and the people were just like characters? Like, it was so weird. But I got that note, and I made a conscious choice to not do any characters at all, for like 6 months or something. And it was very boring. And it was very like, the way my evolution of voice of reason was like a lot of furrowing the brow, really a lot of like this, like unusual people to like, wait, what, like, what are you talking about, and like, wait, why are you doing that, like, just a lot of that, to eventually being able to answer the question for them and tell them what it is. Like, you're fast forwarding through the whole voice of and you're like, oh, framing and like identifying unusual things,
and you can do that when you're yourself. It's easy to like think forward, but if you're juggling an accent or a backstory or whatever, it's hard to like get out of yourself.
And I think I did a lot of, I was one of the few people in this. I think that allowed me to give me a lot of like opportunities, because I think like teams needed that a lot. And I think it was, and I think my philosophy on voice reason has always been, I think this is what trips so many people up, is it's not, I think the roles thing is important. It's important to be, and I've talked to you about this too, voice of reason, an unusual character, but I truly believe that anyone in the scene can say those things. And really it's a conversation. Like, the unusual person can also voice of reason themselves, right? I mean, that's what peas in a potting is. It's like, it's not like we have to turn that part of our brains off.
No, yeah.
If voice of reason hasn't done it, you can do it. You can also do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like what we say, not who we are. So that's all.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Great closing statements. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next segment now, which is our topic of the week. Now, I figured this is a great topic for you. This is something that, you mentioned you had a background in narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did a little bit of narrative before I came out to
oh, cool. I didn't know that.
to LA and to do UCB style. So The topic is game versus narrative. And I think these are two totally, huge styles or huge philosophies or approaches to improv because, if you're trying to do comedy and sketch, like game is what you're doing. But if you're trying to do dramatic acting, I mean, that's like you mentioned, humans are such natural storytellers. You're always going to want to follow plot. And so many people are writers, right? So they're going to be following narrative structure and following plot. So I want to talk about those two differences, but I figured maybe we could start with maybe dissecting maybe some of like the aspects, some of the strengths and weaknesses of both styles, and then we can kind of pit them together.
Yeah, it's funny because you were like narrative versus game, and I think for me, what's interesting is,
do you see them? Yeah, let's start there.
I don't see them as separate. I think I see them as like they're both. There's well, I think of them as separate, but I don't think of them as mutually exclusive. Like they can operate together, and it's hard, but you can do it. And I think
you're describing an episode of Friends.
I mean, truly, it's really like I think sitcoms are a good way to describe it. But if you watch any good like narrative improv, like Improvised Shakespeare is a good example, probably the most off book. I mean, musical improv is really it as well. Any improvised musicals are that. They're doing narrative, but they're also doing comedy. Like they're hitting game. It's all game based, right? And I think with Drunk Theater, I think something we discovered, and there's a bunch of little tidbits that are like my guiding lights when I'm on stage, but the basic idea is that you use the word plot a lot, and there's some terminology that we've kind of like really gotten specific about, which is plot is different than story, and plot is just the things that happen. Story is what is this about? Like, what is this story about? It's about a guy who wants to get his dad's approval, but it starts in like a house, but they can go anywhere and anything can happen. But it's all filtered through the lens of the story of this guy who wants. Is that going to stop him from getting what his dad's approval? Is that going to allow him to get it? And I think once you free yourself from the idea that, oh, this is that anything has to happen, you can then just tell a really inventive, new kind of interesting story. And I think game is truly just like, it's you going right back to like, it's unusual things happen in the scene, like frame it and play it. And I think it's all, I think I heard this talk recently, like all games are really character games. Like people say character game, but it's a character game. It's the unusual person being the game, right? And so the real goal that we try to have, it doesn't always happen, but every character should have some kind of character game that you can hit. And the difference is some characters are the protagonists, so they also have like a want that is more powerful. Usually protagonist is whoever's want overshadows everyone else's want, and then everyone gets on the same page and follows. So I'm throwing a lot of different ideas out here, but the basic idea is that we're always trying to go between like the game of the scene and then also the want of the character. And like the narrative is usually decoration around the fun that you're having within the scene, right? Like the less you can actually talk about the narrative during the scene, the better, because you're just going to argue about how this show should go. That's the worst shows, are just two characters being like, I think we should go into the forest. Like, I don't know if we should. It's boring. No, just go to the forest. Yeah. What is your character? Find the unusual. You're stopping yourself from doing anything to find unusual stuff. So this is one of those formats is like, if you're not yes-anding, it really fucks up the set. Yeah. In a way that I think you can get around a little bit better with, I think, just a montage or like something else. Let's talk about narrative first. I do feel that we're kind of touching on some things. I also feel like maybe people listening to this may already have an inherent understanding of the game. But I want to talk about narrative first, because there's you made a really interesting point right now that plot is different from story. Yeah. And I would also argue one of the tough things about plot and narrative and everything like that, and what you were just saying earlier, so many people understand like the way that it's taught that story and plot, or whatever you want to call it, involves conflict. That conflict is a major thing, right? What's the internal conflict? What's the external conflict? What's the inciting incident? And I think that because of that, in a lot of scenes and just a lot of narratives, a lot of stories, I'll read people's scripts and stuff like that, where it's just like 2 pages of them just arguing over doing the thing. Yeah. And I think, again, not whatever, I'm not trying to like say I'm a great writer, but like usually the conflict that they or why they're arguing about going into the forest or whatever is something underlying, something deeper. There's a theme. Right.
and we're gonna just touch upon it now, and then we got address it later on, right? You're kind of planting seeds or foreshadowing or whatever, right? But in an improv scene, since you don't have the ability to like foresee it, you kind of are just arguing and bickering, you know? So I think that that's one of the interesting things about narrative is that you inherently need to kind of have an ending in mind, or at least like your beginning or your characters where they are here have to be different by the end. They have to have changed.
That's really all very interesting. And I think that the thing with like, the bickering and like the conflict, it's funny because if you talk to Oleg, who's on Drunk Theater with me, he thinks about just comedy and everything through the lens of conflict a lot. Like, like conflict is like, that's how narrative works. But for me, it's a lot.
One of the nicest guys too.
Yeah, I know. But I actually don't even, it's not even in my like vocabulary of how I try to, what I'm thinking about during scenes. A lot of what I think one of the main things I try to do is we do this really fun exercise, which is or useful exercise, it's also fun, but is you have a character just say something like a philosophy, and then the next person is the foil. You try to like someone who wants to stop them from getting that, or like that would be some sort of antagonistic force. They don't necessarily need to specifically point at them and be like for instance, like the kid who wants to like play baseball, like he just wants to like play baseball with his friends or whatever, and then it's like, oh, the mayor who wants to shut down who's like, we need to tear down the baseball field, not necessarily because of the kid, but it's going to get in the way of the kid, right? And then you have somebody who's supporting. And I think when you think about characters that way, it becomes a lot less like two characters trying to like, hey, I want this, no, you don't get this, versus like I don't know, philosophically, what do the characters want,
Right.
And I think that's more, and I think to even like zoom out a little bit more, I think just in general with narrative, I try to think about it as where was I going with this, is more like the overarching thing is who's the overarching want, like what's the overshadowing want, that's the protagonist, and the ending is, do they get it or do they not? It could be either one. That's it. I think if we overcomplicate it, that's when also you got to remember, you're improvising a story, don't complicate it. You don't need to have nuanced stuff. You can't have nuanced stuff. It's just, you can't get everybody on the same page.
Right.
It's just so hard.
You can be over ambitious and you're like, oh, it's already been 20 minutes.
And everybody has a different idea of how we're going to get there. But instead, just throw shit at the protagonist and get them in the way. And then they'll either get what they want or they don't. I think that's the simplest way to think about it.
The thing that you mentioned earlier that I think is really good, it's also something that I did. You talked about the story circle. And I will say, that is a great one. That's a great example to use. I don't think you necessarily need to use the story circle, but you do need to have some structure.
Yes.
Whether it's 3-act structure, whether it's Harold's journey, whether, whatever. But that's something that I do think a lot of people don't take into consideration. Just like you work and drill game. Yeah. You have to work and drill that structure.
So we do have a format, like Drunk Theater. We've been through.
Oh, I've seen it. You've seen it.
But we've also,
I'm trying to deconstruct it.
We've also been through so many different formats.
Yeah.
We actually, for a long time early on, as almost training wheels, we had a narrator. So one of us would step forward and would set up the story. But the problem is, if that person starts setting up an insane world, now you have to live in that. It's like your base reality is now crazy, and those shows never made any sense.
Since you've gone through so many, maybe, and then you can probably tell us like the pitfalls of this. I think one of the things that I struggled with, and I think a lot of teams might struggle with, is when people are operating on different structures or different ideas of what it needs to be. Right. If you recognize that, like, this is the first scene we're introducing people, and then you kill someone in the first scene, you're like,
right. Everyone's like, wait, now what? But I think that
should happen in the second act.
I feel like we're now at the point where this happened. Actually, this literally happened. We're doing Halloween shows this month. So in the second, our format is first scene, 2-person scene, and then you can do side support. We can try to and they try to find a game and they try to lay out like a want, and then the second scene, either they're the same or they're like some sort of conflicting or like, antagonistic force, and similar. Find a game, play it, characters, side support, and then the third scene is like a group game. We try to do a group scene, and in the second scene of the show, one of the characters gets murdered because it was like a Halloween show, and then the character came back later because it turned out they weren't dead, and we interviewed them, and so you can like revisit. But I think the truth is, and it's improv, anything should be able to be happening, right? And I think having a structure is really important, because once you have it down, you can break it. You can start to like be more loose about it, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like we sometimes, one of the things we've realized recently is that, oh, the third scene was always the group scene. But now we realize truly that's just there because we need group energy every once in a while. And it doesn't have to be the third scene. It just, at some point we should have group energy. And it's like, just like the Herald, right? Like you need to do these things because this is how it feels like a good show. And it trains all these different parts. And I think the narrative, we kind of came to the same place, which is we want to have two characters talking about what they want, and then we want to have like a group energy so you can be more fun and loose, and then we want to all kind of like mash it all together. And so yeah, it is I think like that, having that format does get everyone on the same page, but I think once you're comfortable with the group, then everybody kind of knows that we're breaking it, and they're like, all right, cool, we're breaking it.
Right. And same, yeah,
With anything, yeah.
Once you know the rules, you can break them, and then once you break them, hopefully everybody knows how to get it back on page because you've done it so many times.
And even we've maybe you've even seen one. We've recently done, every once in a while we'll like realize, oh, this is a mono scene. Like this first scene is 8 minutes long. This is a mono scene. Let's just do a mono scene.
Yeah.
And then never says it out. No one says it out loud, but
nobody edits. You start walking on.
You just start walk on, walk off, and then it's like cool. The whole set is, and we've done that 3 or 4 times, and it's always been such a fun time.
Yeah.
And I think just we've now realized, oh, just having that like tool belt of different formats. We even did an Evente. We would do Evente a few times, and it's always been interesting. A very abbreviated Evente, not the real one. That's so complicated, but truly just having the ending and then finding your way back to the ending, which is kind of cool.
Great. Yeah. All really good points. And I want to talk about game now.
Okay.
Sketch style, comedy, improv, whatever you want to call it, right? But one of the things that you brought up, and I think this is one of the things that is a little bit contrasting, is that when it comes to game, it's hard to find one funny thing, right? It's hard to be funny. But when you find that one funny thing, you kind of want to maximize it. So you kind of want to repeat it. You kind of want to patternize it and do it over and over again. Yeah. One of the things I think is, and one of the reasons why it has to be so short is because, again, you're pacing stuff out, right? Yeah. So are you really going to play this game slowly over 20 minutes where every 7 minutes I'll do this thing again, right?
Right.
Usually it's not, right? Usually the rhythm of comedy is much more rapid. So you may need to repeat it every 1 minute, right? And then 1 minute later, and then do it again. And then 30 seconds, maybe you kind of want to like speed up your pacing. And what that doesn't allow you to do is it doesn't allow you to change. Because one thing you mentioned is that you're, over time, you kind of need to change. So kind of like the same way you kind of are thinking about this structure, you think about this like overarching story. When it comes to game style, you're not thinking about change. You're not thinking about change over time. You're not thinking about the overarching story. All you're thinking about is what else can we do to get this thing to happen.
But you know what's interesting is that you bring that up is I just took a Alex Fernie montage class, like building a better montage. So, and it was really cool to learn UC, just like do organic. Haven't done an organic lesson forever. And there was actually like the way he approached, he's like, how you should approach the sets is try to have like a agreed upon rule or like some sort of thing that you want to, not necessarily like, this is how we're going to do the montage, but like there was a couple things where it's like, oh, we're not going to do any sweeps. Like, you know, maybe just do slacker style, like convoy, no sweeps. That's our rule that we're going to impose. We're going to just say. And then another interesting one was make sure a character has an emotional change within the scene before you edit. And that was very interesting because it's like you're not told. I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but I remember just like comedy is not. There is no change necessarily. At least I used to hear that a lot. And so it is interesting to be like, there's a tool within a scene where you can completely change, your character can like change how they feel. And it can either, I guess, and I think the nuance of that is like they can go from being a little bit angry to very angry, or they could be a little bit happy to very happy, or they can be happy to sad. Like they can shift their emotional state. Yeah. And I think that gives you more real estate to then play the game in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it was very enlightening. I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't make it unplayable. It just makes it playable in a new way. It's kind of fun. So
yeah, and maybe I should have been myself. I'm not saying that you can't.
No, but I do agree. It does. It's not something that
the equation or the formula, right? Because like if I'm like, hey, like if the comedy is in the dad not accepting his son, and we're laughing at that, which is a weird thing to be laughing at, but like, right? Then by the end, if he says, okay, son, I accept you, then it's like, well, we got to find a different way to play this now. So it presents a new challenge.
Right.
I guess it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah.
But that's actually something in going to the narrative thing is like, there is this fear that we do it a lot, is like, just don't give them the thing. Don't get, like, even in improv, like, don't give, but truly, it's like, there was a play we did practice where we were like trying to steal a whale from a zoo or something like that, and we were just stalling. We just kept not wanting to do it because we were too early. We're like, we can't steal a thing yet. But what we realized is, if we just steal it, now what? The play can be, what happens now? Like, then what? Oh, like, then what happens? It's like, what's this actually about? It's not about stealing. It's about this person wanting to be recognized or something, right?
Yeah.
That can exist no matter what happens with the heist. And I think we're so afraid, again, that's just plot. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
It's so irrelevant. Plot is just like anything. Like, you could introduce a like supernatural element, but if that guy gets in the way of him getting his dad's approval or whatever, then that's still, But I think it's like, that's the guiding light. It's just like a game, right? Anything can happen, but you can filter it through your lens.
Yeah. And a lot of that is just, I think, the scary. It's scary to like refigure out the math. I think you and I are very mathematical people.
Very
so like,
much,
whenever we're doing a scene or trying to play the game in different ways, you kind of need the right formula. You need the right ways to play it. So like, if, for instance, this is a bad example, but like, if the game is like a guy who, always yells when he's happy, that's a very shallow game. I understand. I recognize
but why does he do it?
He's always Yahoo. But it's just like, if you put him in a sports game, that's not gonna be funny.
He's
supposed to do that. So like, there's math there where we're just like, no, that doesn't work out. And that's one of the other limitations, right? One of the tough things about game where you can't mix it with narrative, because if story wise we need to put him in a sports game,
right?
Now we're like, but then again,
but I think like,
there's a way to play this now. There's a way now. How can we
like,
make this even more unusual? Maybe everyone's cheering.
But I think what's funny to me when you said that is like, oh, put him in a sports game. Then that's just like, now it's everyone's there is like, now we're all, you find like-minded people who are like, like,
and then maybe now we're just replicating. Now we're just, it's all peas in a pod.
It's peas in a pod, right?
I don't know. All this to say though is that this is again, as a mathematician.
Yeah.
If you know math, you know math. If you add more variables, we can figure it out. It just takes more time, and it's always a little bit maybe scary. Maybe it's a little annoying. It's just like we're lazy, right? We're humans. We're lazy. We're like, oh gosh, I got to reconfigure I got to recrunch the numbers.
I have thought about this thing recently, which is, you've probably been in a scene where this has happened. It happened to me a few times where I'll have a game and someone will like tag me into tag me into a new thing, and I'm like, all right, I'm the unusual one. What am I? And then the scenario, I cannot connected to anything related, but I think that's sometimes I'm trying to get out of my head about trying to be too mathematical about it. Where versus like, sometimes
just feel it.
Just don't stop thinking about what they were trying to do. Instead, where are we? What's happening? What's my game? Just like, that's my guiding light. Filter it through and you can react. And then those are the most surprising. And even if sometimes you just want to, it's fun. Like, if you're with some people you like to do improv with, you just fuck with the other person by putting them in a place which does not make sense for this yelling guy. But then there's always something you can filter through, right? And it's almost more, it's a fun exercise,
I do agree, it's fun. And like, I think the thing that makes it, the thing that like, for me at least, and being able to do that, the thing that's always just so freeing about this is just like, I have to deal with the consequences of this.
Right.
So if I'm the guy that's screaming, and you can just like, hey, by the way, your dog got hit by a car, and I can cheer. I don't have to deal with the consequences. Like, why is that? And that's so rude. And how are you gonna get a new dog now? Whatever. In a narrative, you kind of have to deal with that, right?
Right. Yeah. That's
and
true.
In the scene, it's just like, no, tag me out or edit the scene, because we're not gonna do dead dog.
Well, we have we
could do dead dog.
There's the thing. You end up in some problematic. There's some like problematic.
We could do some dead dog
where it's like, oh. But then I think truly, there's something I have learned from doing that is like, when you do corner yourself in a place where it's like, ooh, this is like not great content, you need to just make it clear to the audience where you stand on it. And I think as long as they are clear on that, hey, we're not on the side of this bad thing. We've been able to turn it around so many times. And then like, oh, okay, they're shitting. That one character's playing the bad guy, but everyone else is making it very clear that they're shitting on that. And that person also needs to not be too real about it. And then the audience, I think, is okay with that generally. Some people will just not be able to be moved, but I think for the most part, as long as you give your point of view as being on the right side of history, so to speak, like, they're gonna be okay with it. No dead dog stuff though. I try to
I'm sorry I brought that up. Even
that's so offensive, dude.
We can end this podcast.
No, it's fine. Wait, I have a question. You said because you alluded to it. You said you did narrative.
Yeah.
Where?
This was before
Also,
LA.
what was
It
the format of
Orange
the
County.
narrative?
We have very simple structure because we I being the writer, I was like, let's get in hero's journey, right? And then like, let's do Luke Skywalker.
We barely do that anymore, but
yeah,
it's funny.
But to me, I was like, that's the most like sophisticated, most elegant.
It's how we also started. Yeah,
and like, I'll have the most, and then people would struggle with that because it's a lot,
so much.
It's like
you
16,
really
12,
really
16
and also
things.
you're like, are we all on the same page? And
yeah,
no, you're never on the same page.
So then I was like, okay, let's get back, and we did try the story circle, and then we eventually went down to the Pixar.
Oh yeah, Pixar is pretty good. Yeah,
which is just and because of that, and because of that, and because of that. But no, Once Upon a Time,
we did that too. Yeah.
But then suddenly, and then because of that,
and
then fell finally.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I was like, that's the easiest thing we can do. But the thing that was really tough about that is, and it's the same idea, you find a protagonist, and you just find ways to make their stuff bad, or you make their stuff like make more obstacles to how they don't get what they want, and then at the end you give it to them. And but one of our audience members called us out one day. They were like, I love your scenes. I saw, it's just how can we make David's life worse until the end? And I was usually the and then when that person said that, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Because it became so transparent to the audience that this person who honestly, we didn't do it that many. Maybe they only saw like 5 or 6
but it
shows.
Seemed like
within 5 or 6 shows, they're like, I love what you guys do. It's great. It's just how many ways can we make David's life difficult? And then he gets it. And I'm like,
that's interesting.
You nailed it on the head. Exactly what you just said is exactly what we're saying in practice. So I was just like,
I will say one of the things that we've recently fairly, but the best of our sets have something which I think all improv should have, all like good 20-30 minute sets, is heightening. Is like, I think the problem is sometimes we reach like the person gets what they want, and then we're like, oh, but now what? And then we have to have a scene that takes place after the show's over. Like, it's like, the show's over. What are we doing? We have to like find more runway. And that's 90% because we didn't heighten the reality or the show or the want and everything, right? Like, we didn't heighten to a building, like a boiling point, and then edit, right? And then call the show. And so that's something that just another narrative thought I've been having recently. And I think it's also, man, there's so many fucking things to think about narrative. And on top of that, you're trying to just play game really well. Like, it's so, and that's like, on its own hard. So,
and it's like you mentioned, like, eventually people land on what works. And I think when it comes to like theater or narrative, like there's a reason why almost all plays, I would say almost all plays are 2 acts, right? The reason why almost all movies are 3 acts. The reason why almost all 1 hour long TV shows are 4 acts, because there's a rhythm to it. An audience kind of knows what they want to expect. And when you're dealing with narrative improv, that's why it's either usually one act or 2 acts will resolve it. All that to say, though, is that when we're talking about UCB, this is stuff that I don't think anybody thinks about. We're not thinking about acts. But I
think all that stuff, because one of my coaches is a UCB guy, Mark David. Is that right order? Yeah, Mark David Christensen, and amazing coach, really fantastic. And he's the one who really like solidified the idea of story versus plot, and like the distinction, and like also just the big thing he really harps on is just the commitment. I think like with narrative, you need to commit more. I think you just need to like really act the shit out of your
audience won't care if you don't care,
because then you can like buy goodwill and just attention. You just can keep them interested. And I swear to God, like, it's one of the Drunk Theater is one of the only shows I'm ever in where you can make the audience go, oh, like they'll go, oh, when a character is like sad, like, because you followed them trying to get this thing, and then they're like saying some immoral truth of being like, this whole time I thought that this was the reason why. You can get away with these like big, very ham-fisted, hammy like truths that are very like Pixar kind of, and it maybe doesn't make all that much sense, but it's like, I thought that, but truly I think it was you the whole time. And I was like, oh yeah, and I was like, that didn't make all that much sense. Why are they awing?
Well, and that's
you can get away with it.
I forgot where I heard this. This might have been like a professor like in college, but like people want that movie ending, so their brain does a lot of work for you.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Point.
So if it is just like, it doesn't really make sense that like,
but it's a resolution. He doesn't. It sounds like a resolution.
He's gonna accept his son now because he got him Halloween.
Yeah, exactly.
Costume.
Yeah,
and they're like, dude, shut up.
But that's the thing. We're also improvisers. Like, if that is it, one of the characters needs to just change and decide. The dad needs to just make a connected, do
Yeah.
the justification exercise to like make it make sense.
Yeah.
Being like,
and again, like it can almost be for a joke, but it's just like, son, I know this whole play for the
yeah,
last 25
we do
minutes
that all the time. It's great.
has been me not accepting you, but I saw the way you beat up that other kid, and now I'm proud of you and now I accept you. I was like, great. And
just
the audience,
take everything there, put it together, and give them
the audience isn't
justification.
gonna
They don't care.
like wait a second.
Yeah.
I thought it was about your.
Wait, they retconned the end? No, it's like no one gives
Yeah.
a shit.
Yeah.
Imagine someone got upset for you. They look at improv as retconning. Oh, that whole show
Yeah.
retcon the ending. I was like, yeah, they made it up.
That is one of the nice things about like all improv. Like the audience wants you to do well. They want you to do well as much as you want to do well. So
there's so much goodwill. They
maybe that's some that's some
forgiveness rather. Yeah,
that's some connection there. It's like if it's not the most best like ending storytelling, they're like, I still want it to be a good story.
Yeah.
And if it's not like the funniest joke, the audience still wants it to be a good joke. Though that game, it's a little off, but I don't care.
As long as they're committing and they're in it and they're not, and as long as we're not like, then I think they're fine 90% of the time.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for going over and breaking down game versus narrative. We have an expert here, and
expert.
We at least broke down in some of the differences. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our final segment, which is gonna be our
hot improv takes.
You familiar?
Yeah.
You listen to
I
this
forgot about it. I forgot about it.
We're just gonna pick a trend in improv that we either want to see more of, see less of, or we think it's great, and we want to keep it there. Do you want me to go first?
Sure, you go first.
Okay. This is my hot improv take, but it's not really an improv take. It's just a hot take. It's honestly not even that hot take. I think I just want to give some knowledge for a second. I just want to drop some pearls. All right. Hot improv take. If you want something, ask for it. This is a really good life advice, really good career advice, just really good professional advice. People want to help you. People want to give you opportunities, and they have opportunities to give. They have knowledge to give. They have resources and answers for you. All they're waiting for is people to ask. I know it's tough. I'm there too. It's always tough to ask, but the people that have asked, and when I've asked in the past, never regret it. And when people help someone that's asked them for help, they never regret it either. It's also just a really good like reciprocity thing, because at the end of the day, you help them, or sorry, so someone helps you, right? In 5 years, they may need your help, and then they're gonna be more comfortable asking you, and then you can repay the favor. I don't want to like out you, but like, you know, you asked to audition and you got it, and that's great. You know, I've asked to be part of practice groups that did not want me to be on their team, and they said yes. Like, it is important that we are asking, and vice versa too. There's someone you're like, hey, you know, I want to ask that person to be on my team.
Yeah, or just do a team, make a like do it, whatever,
take a shot. And I like, you know, worst thing they can say is no, but they're gonna remember it. And in the future, if they need to look for a team, they're like, well, I know he asked me, so he needs it. So and ask for a raise, and ask for the corner office, and you know, ask her to marry you, whatever, right? Like ask. That's not a hot improv take at all.
That's not life takes, dude. Just good.
It's not even a hot take though.
No, it's not hot. It's yeah, it's not a hot take. It's more like it's just good advice. Yeah,
just something that I've been like seeing experience lately. People are just like, oh, something. Like,
yeah, no, I think it's
I
think I've always. I don't think it's something that I grew up being able to do, but I think it became a thing where I was like, oh, I really want that. Also, just asking yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Like, if you're kind about how you go about doing it, then why would anybody be upset at you? Just like, so what? Worst case, no op, right?
Yeah,
nothing.
So I don't know if I bailed out on this, but again, it's just something I've been seeing a lot. I guess the hot improv take is like, you know what? I got to spin it. The hot improv take is people are not asking for what they want enough. Ask for it. All right.
Hot improv take. Let's see. Yours is very like more outside of the scenes.
I know, I kind of cheated.
But let's see. For me, I think for me, the improv wise, the things that a hot take, I guess, is it's not really a hot take again. It's a couple things. I think something that these are just things I want to be doing more, that I think a part of why we don't all collectively do them more is that they're not taught or like nitpicked. Is space object work is like not, I have a few coaches who do this, but like not enough people like pick at people being like, do something in a scene, right? And I think because of that, people just don't do anything. They like don't fill the space, be in the space. And then on top of that, people are still, I see people who are like really good, really good, like cerebral improvisers or whatever, but are still like letting go of glass. You know, it's like that. I lose my mind when I see somebody who's like who's good at improv, but has a glass, and then they're like, wait, what do you mean? And I'm like, huh? What the fuck? It's like, and I don't know if I try to be very aware of I even like when a scene's over and I'm getting notes, I'll like notice myself. I'll be like, this is a fucking psychopathic thing to do. But those things make me want to never stop. Then I don't stop doing the scene. Right. And I think I've just noticed, I don't know if this is an LA thing or what, but I used to have coaches who would like be like, no, don't walk through there. Yeah. You
There's a
watch
table there, yeah.
like side coaching to not fuck up the space object work. Or same thing. If you have a piece of paper and then you just kind of, I see like 401 grad shows when that happens. And I was like, I've been in the room when we're getting notes that no one's ever noted on that. I'm like, why? It's so important. The reality of the scene is, and so to me, I think that's my hot take is coaches out there, note that shit. And also, if you're seeing yourself do improv, notice if you're letting go of the thing, and if the glass is disappearing and coming back, you know.
Yeah, no, that's
my, because I see, I'll tell you, I'll like shout out somebody who's so good at space object work and always does is Alex, who's on my Lloyd team. Alex is so good, and he can always do something. Like he's always doing something and he does it really well. And also there's so much room for comedy in space object work, is like you can do things in a funny, heightened way, right?
Yeah.
Like cut something really like you wouldn't in real life and then be like, oh, here you go. You know, it's like eating funny. Jim Woods is great at it, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's something that I aspirationally want to do. And I think a part of why I don't do as much is I look around and no one else is doing it. So you're not like, you know, rising tide is not lifting all boats kind of thing.
This is by no means a defense of that, because I totally agree with you. And you know, I think everybody should be able to do everything well, but I think it's just different styles. Some people's comedy is in their bodies, some people's comedy is in their mouths, some people's comedy is in their brains, right? So that's why it's tough. Like if your comedy is in your mouth, you're not thinking about the physical space. You're thinking about the funniest thing you can say, right? And vice versa. If your comedy is in your body, sometimes they mess up a name, or because they're like, that's not important. But great hot improv take. Sorry for the little tangent there, but great hot improv take. We're gonna wrap it up with your plugs. You got lots of things to plug.
Lots of plugs. All right, I'll do it in order of what's coming up.
Yeah.
So, what day is it? Tuesday?
Yeah.
I'll plug your show tonight. Go see Asian AF. It's too late. It's already happened.
Sorry, too late.
No, this is out tomorrow.
It's out tomorrow.
What time tomorrow? No one's gonna watch
Bro,
it.
it might be Thursday.
But if you don't see
Bro,
it,
might
if
be
you
out
don't see it,
Thursday.
I have a trio with myself, this guy Nick Merling and Nico Teal. Sorry, Nico. Is called Gunk. It's a three.
Gunk.
And I love this scene because it's just pure insanity. It's like and so we are we're at the Yard on tomorrow, and then we're also performing this Saturday at Toretto Sauce at 7 p.m. at the Clubhouse. So it's going to be the Sauce, which I'm on, Toretto, which a bunch of other people are on, and then Gunk, which is the three of us. So we get to come watch that, and then also Toretto Sauce. And then next Tuesday, I'm in every other Tuesday. The Sauce hosts Broadway Tuesdays, and then on this Friday is Drunk Theater, and then come see Lloyd. I have a lot of fucking shows on right now.
A lot of shows, yeah.
And then Lloyd, 1st and 3rd. So next show's November 6th, I believe.
Great. I'm glad you can say that now. I don't have to say that anymore. And drop the world's best Instagram handle.
Oh yeah, my Instagram handle is Sahil S-A. It's there probably written
at Sahil.
At Sahil. Also that's my Venmo. So if you want to Venmo me, that's my name. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, thanks so much, Sahil, for coming in. We talked for plenty, but appreciate it.
Oh yeah, shit. Here for a while
now.
2.5 hours.
Yeah,
it's been 8 hours. All right.
All right. Well, bye everybody, and congrats again.
Was that the word you said?
Congrats again.
Congrats. You say krantz again.
And krantz again.
And krantz again.